He had always believed he would never be a father, until his ex showed up at his door, holding two girls with his eyes. Please don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel. Daniel Grayson was 38, running a multinational tech empire. To him, life was something you could plan, control, and measure. His days were carved into precise minutes. His meetings ran like clockwork, and his office towered over the city like a throne. From the outside, everything looked perfect. His suits were pressed, his steps confident, his words always calculated. But beneath all that perfection, there was a quiet, invisible crack. One that had once been small, but 3 years ago, it became too big to ignore. That day, he was sitting in a sterile doctor's office, across from a specialist carefully choosing his words. "Mr. Grayson, we've reviewed your test results. I'm sorry, but you won't be able to have children. It's genetic, irreversible. There are options, but biological fatherhood isn't one of them." Daniel didn't react. He just gave a slight nod, as if he were listening to a quarterly earnings report. Calm, composed. But inside, something shattered. Something deep. As he left that office, he wasn't just walking out of a room, he was walking away from a dream he'd never admit he had. That painful truth came right after his intense, complicated relationship with Clara Fisher ended. Clara had been his complete opposite: warm, open, emotional. Daniel had been all walls and control. One argument was all it took. He cut her out, changed his number, took an extended work trip overseas, and vanished from her life. After that, he shut the door on emotions. For good. Years passed. Daniel buried himself in work. He became the man people admired for his cool leadership. Investors trusted him. His team followed him. But at night, when the city lights flickered through his penthouse windows, the shadows of what he'd lost crept back in. Then, one gloomy November afternoon, he was at the head of a boardroom table during a meeting when his assistant leaned in and whispered, "Mr. Grayson, there's a woman downstairs. She's here with 2 little girls. Her name is Clara Fisher." And just like that, the name he hadn't heard in years sent a tremor through his entire world. His mind spun, but he held himself together. Calmly, he got up and headed to the elevator. When the doors opened, he saw her right away. Clara was standing by the front desk, with 2 little girls in pastel coats. Identical, holding her hands. Clara looked different, still beautiful, but tired. But Daniel's eyes locked onto the girls. Blonde hair, deep blue eyes. Familiar. Too familiar. Clara met his gaze and said, steady but soft, "We need to talk, Daniel. These girls, they're yours." The words just hung in the air. His mind ran back to that doctor's voice. Impossible. But these girls in front of him weren't a theory, they were real. Their faces, their eyes. The resemblance was undeniable. And for the first time in years, Daniel felt completely out of control. After a moment of silence, Clara said, "Can we talk somewhere private?" He nodded and led them to a side room off the lobby. The only sound was the girls softly whispering to each other. Daniel tried to speak. "This can't be possible. Years ago, they told me I couldn't." Clara quietly reached into her bag and pulled out an envelope. Daniel opened it. "Read it. Read it again. And again. Daniel Grayson, biological father, probability, 99.9%. The paper felt heavier with each second. His eyes turned to Clara, walls breaking behind them. She continued, "Their names are Anna and Mia. And yes, they're your daughters. I didn't want to keep them from you, but you disappeared. I did what I could on my own. But a few weeks ago, Anna got sick. And that's when I realized these girls deserve more than just money. They deserve their father. All of him." Daniel slowly sank to the floor. Little Anna walked over, unsure, and gently placed her hand on his knee. She looked up at him with curious eyes. His throat tightened. For the first time in his life, he felt bare. "I don't know how to do this," he whispered, "but I want to try." Clara nodded. "That's all I want. Just try." And in that moment, the carefully crafted life Daniel had built changed forever. That day, Daniel Grayson didn't go back upstairs. He felt like he was walking through some alternate reality. Everything he'd spent years building, his perfectly structured, tightly controlled world, had been shaken by the sound of 2 little girls laughing. And as he watched them, only one thought echoed in his head. "I'm a father." That word had always felt far away, unreal, impossible. But now, it wasn't just a word, it was real. And it was walking around the room in tiny shoes. The next day, Daniel called Clara. This time, it was him reaching out. He wanted to know more. About the girls. About everything. Without hesitation, Clara invited him to her modest apartment. Compared to Daniel's sleek, polished offices, her place felt like a whole different universe. A narrow hallway with kids' drawings on the walls, plush toys scattered across the floor, and the smell of vanilla and fresh coffee floating in the air. Warm, simple, real. When Clara opened the door, Daniel couldn't help but notice the tired lines under her eyes. But her voice, still familiar, still kind, welcomed him in. "Hey, Daniel," she said with a soft smile. Inside, Anna and Mia were quietly playing on the carpet. As Daniel watched them, he felt a strange mix of unfamiliarity and something that felt a lot like belonging. For a while, he just sat, observing. Clara brought them juice, and Daniel picked up a small stuffed bunny from the floor. Anna noticed and walked over, gently offering it to him. That simple act warmed something deep inside him. He took the bunny and whispered, "Thank you." Clara stood back, watching the moment unfold. Her eyes shimmered, but she didn't stop smiling. "They're still strangers to you," she said gently. "But kids can feel things, Daniel. If you plan to stay, they'll know." Daniel nodded. "I want to stay. I want to get to know them. And you too." He didn't finish the sentence, but Clara didn't need him to. She just lowered her head, quietly understanding. They talked for hours that day. Clara told him about Anna, how curious and fearless she was. How Mia was softer, more shy, but full of love. She told him about their first steps, their first words, their favorite songs. And with every little detail, Daniel felt something inside begin to fill. He could feel the ache of all the moments he'd missed, but also the hope of all the moments he still had a chance to create. The girls slowly began to accept his presence. Mia, especially, would rest her head on Clara's lap while sneaking glances at Daniel, almost like she was trying to build a silent connection with him. As Daniel watched them, something shifted. For the first time, his mind wasn't on his company or his next big deal. He realized that these girls, this life was the most important thing he could ever invest in. Later that night, after the girls were tucked into bed, Clara came back into the living room. Daniel was still sitting on the couch, holding a tiny teddy bear. Then quietly, he asked, "Do you still feel angry at me?" His eyes stayed down. Clara paused, thought for a moment. "No," she said honestly. "I was, but not anymore. Because now, you're here, and that means more than your silence ever did." Daniel smiled faintly. "Thank you. I feel like I owe everything to you. And to them." Clara nodded, a soft light in her eyes. "Then just do one thing," she said. "Stay? The rest will come." As Daniel walked home that evening, the weight he'd carried for years felt a little lighter. For the first time in a long time, he had a purpose. Not a project, not a stock price, but the hope that, one morning, 2 little girls would call out his name at breakfast. And maybe, at night, curl up beside him to hear a bedtime story. And that night, for the first time in years, he didn't sleep alone. On his nightstand was a drawing Clara had given him. 3 figures holding hands. Beneath it, one word was written: family. After that day, Daniel Grayson's life split into two. On one side, there was still the massive company he ran, hundreds of employees, decisions worth millions. On the other side, 2 little girls who had just learned to walk, who hugged him tight and whispered, "Good morning," before breakfast. And Clara, those first weeks felt strange. Everything was unfamiliar. Daniel had spent years accepting that he'd never be a father. Now, every morning, he woke up with the same question in his head. Can I be a good dad today? The first time he tried to make a bottle, his hands shook. Mia wriggled in his arms, but wouldn't drink a drop. Clara gave him a soft smile, took the bottle gently, and showed him the right angle. "Here, try now," she said patiently. Daniel, a man who could memorize corporate reports overnight, was just now learning how helpless you could feel trying to wipe a toddler's nose. But slowly, things began to change. He started blocking out his calendar for things like park with Anna and story time with Mia instead of board meetings. He wasn't just existing as the CEO anymore, he was learning how to be their dad. Weekends especially became sacred. He spent more time at Clara's apartment helping make breakfast, showing the girls how to stir scrambled eggs, helping them set the table. Every time Anna laughed, it hit Daniel in the chest like a soft punch. It was like for the first time ever his heart found its rhythm. At first, Clara was cautious. She wanted to trust him, but she was scared too. Scared he'd disappear again. Scared he'd break her heart all over. But Daniel didn't waver. His steady presence slowly wore down her fear. Each evening, he stayed to help put the girls in pajamas, brush their hair, read them stories. Sometimes he'd fall asleep mid-sentence, curled up on the edge of the couch with a storybook in hand. Clara would find him like that, tucked under a blanket, and quietly smile to herself. One morning over breakfast, Daniel looked at her and said, "You've done all this alone. I admire you for that." Clara put down her fork and met his eyes. It was hard, yes, but worth it. Because our girls, they're worth everything. And now, I'm not alone anymore. That sentence, "I am not alone anymore," stuck with Daniel. It echoed inside him for days. He'd worn loneliness like armor for so long. But now, taking it off didn't make him weak. It made him feel real, whole. One Sunday morning, Clara invited him to take the girls to the park. The air was cold, Anna's cheeks were red from the wind, and Mia refused to keep her gloves on, stubbornly negotiating with Daniel. As they walked through the park, Daniel and Clara shared their first honest conversation about the past. "There was a time," Clara said, "when my vulnerability scared you." Daniel looked down. "Yeah, because I was just as vulnerable. I just didn't know how to admit it." They looked at each other. For a long time, they didn't speak. But this silence wasn't awkward, it was warm. Clara gently reached out and touched his hand. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. Some of the strongest connections aren't spoken, they're felt. When they got back, Clara put the girls to bed and made Daniel a cup of tea. They sat quietly in the living room. And then, out of nowhere, Daniel said, "I'm not going anywhere. Not this time. I'm here for the girls. And for you." Clara didn't look away. "The day I believe that. Maybe we'll get a second chance," she said. Then silence. But this time, it was the kind of silence where something new was starting to grow. It was a cold winter evening, the wind howling outside. Daniel was in the middle of a meeting at the company, graphs glowing on the screen in front of him, strategists talking behind him. The room buzzed with business, with motion, with certainty. Then his phone vibrated. Just one name on the screen, Clara. He answered immediately. Her voice wasn't like usual, there was fear in it. Shaky, rushed, panicked. "Daniel, Emma's burning up. She won't stop crying. Her breathing sounds strange. I'm really scared." That was all it took. He didn't leave a note, didn't explain. He grabbed his coat and ran out of the building like a man on a mission. He cut through traffic like time was the enemy. By the time he reached Clara's apartment, the rain had started to fall. He was soaked, drops sliding off his coat as he knocked. Clara opened the door, her eyes puffy, hair a mess. "Come in," she whispered. "She's been waiting for you." Daniel rushed to Emma's room. The little girl was curled up in bed, cheeks red-hot with fever, her tiny body squirming restlessly. She was too exhausted to cry anymore, but she looked so small, so fragile. Clara had already called the doctor, no immediate danger, but they needed to keep a close eye on her through the night. Daniel picked Emma up, and something inside him twisted. Holding her was like holding the weight of the world. She rested her head against his chest, and within seconds, she stopped crying, like she'd found what she needed. Clara stood off to the side, watching, her eyes filled with tears. "She calmed down when you came," she whispered. They spent the whole night together, taking turns sitting by Emma's side, fixing the blanket, checking her temperature, gently dabbing her forehead with a cool cloth. At one point, Clara lay down on the couch, eyes fluttering, closed from exhaustion. Daniel stayed with Emma, still cradling her, her tiny hands warming in his palms. As the night wore on, the silence between them turned softer, realer. Clara eventually came and sat beside him. She leaned her head on his shoulder and simply said, "I'm glad you came." Daniel closed his eyes. "I'll be here from now on, Clara. I won't leave you again." She didn't answer right away. Then, softly, "I needed to hear that." By the time the sun rose, Emma's fever had broken. She was sleeping peacefully. Clara and Daniel, still in the same room, hovered on the edge of sleep, themselves tired but together. That night had healed more than just a child. It had brought two hearts a little closer too. That morning, they made breakfast together. There was a calm in Clara's eyes and a quiet resolve in Daniel's posture. Both of them felt that something had shifted. This wasn't just a routine built for the girls anymore. There was a new bond between them, fragile, but real. As Daniel left the apartment, Clara walked him to the door. And for the first time, she asked, "Will you come again tomorrow?" Daniel turned, smiled gently. "Not just tomorrow. Every day." And in that moment, Clara knew this man wasn't running anymore. He was staying, not just with his body but with his heart, his soul, and every imperfect part of himself. Months passed. For Daniel and Clara, time was no longer measured by calendars, but by small moments. Anna crying for her stuffed rabbit in the mornings. Mia falling asleep in Daniel's arms at night. And Clara, every morning, locking eyes with him in the kitchen for just a few seconds. At first, there were challenges, of course adjusting, trust issues, the ghosts of old wounds. But over time, everything softened. The distance between them shrank with every laugh from Anna, every touch from Mia. Daniel now spent several nights a week at Clara's place. Sometimes he cooked. Sometimes he got lost in the sea of Legos with the girls. Even on the toughest days, after work, his first stop wasn't his penthouse anymore, it was Clara's small, cozy apartment. There, he felt at peace. There, he felt like he mattered. There, it felt like home. As the twins' second birthday approached, Daniel was filled with excitement. Not for grand parties or expensive gifts. He dreamed of a small, meaningful celebration. And there was only one place on his mind. The small park they had all visited together for the first time as a family. He asked Clara, and she agreed without hesitation. "That's our beginning," she said simply. On the morning of the day, the park was buzzing with life. Colorful balloons floating between the trees. Tiny cakes set out on blankets. Crowns made for Anna and Mia. But there were no crowds. Only a few of Clara's family, some trusted friends of Daniel, and most importantly 2 little girls with light in their eyes, untouched by the sorrows of life. As the celebration drew to a close, and the day started to turn golden, Daniel called Clara over. The girls were running on the grass, and Daniel took Clara's hand. "This isn't just their birthday," he said, looking into her eyes. "This is the first time in my life I've truly felt like I belong. And with you, I want to feel this forever." Clara's eyes widened. In that moment, Daniel reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, elegant box. When he opened it, it wasn't a diamond ring that appeared, but a simple yet deeply meaningful one. "Clara Fisher," he said, his voice soft but resolute. "Will you marry me? Will you continue to grow this life with me, with us?" Clara couldn't hold back the tears. For a few seconds, she couldn't speak, she just nodded. "Yes," she whispered, 1,000 times yes. At that moment, Anna and Mia came running up to them, looking up with wide eyes. Clara bent down and hugged them. "Your daddy gave us a home," she said with a smile. "Now we're complete." That day, no newspaper headlines were made. No social media posts went viral. But in that park, the birth of a new life, one built by 2 broken souls healing together, officially began. In the following weeks, they moved into their new home. A little place outside the city with a garden, where the mornings started with bird songs and the evenings were filled with the laughter of children. Clara, preparing Daniel's morning coffee in the kitchen, looked at everything with more confidence now. Because the man beside her was no longer just the father of her children. He was the partner who healed her wounds too. Daniel, every night after tucking the girls in, sat at the little kitchen table with Clara, sipping tea, marveling at how much had changed. "I used to think I'd be alone forever. Now, I'm surrounded by more than I could ever have imagined." One evening, Clara rested her head on his shoulder and whispered, "You know, for the first time in my life, I learned what peace really means with you." Daniel gently tilted his head, placing a kiss on her forehead. "I started learning with you." And so, a family was born not from grand miracles, but from small acts of forgiveness, patience, and silent loyalty. For Daniel Grayson, success was no longer measured by stock market numbers, but by Mia's laughter, Anna's running feet, and the last glance Clara gave him as she returned to the kitchen. And this time he knew. Life isn't completed by the things you control, but by the people you open your heart to. Please don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel.